The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest structure ever built by living hands. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to peace and cooperation. For 12,000 years, the great species of the galaxy had gathered here to solve their problems with words instead of weapons. War was a memory. Violence was history. The civilized universe had moved beyond such primitive things. Or so they believed. Ambassador of the Empire stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall, even by standards, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that held no warmth. Behind him, through the massive windows, his fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal insects. 300 warships, the largest military force the galaxy had seen in 5,000 years. "You have 60 cycles to surrender your territories," announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The outer rim belongs to the Empire now. Resist, and we will take it by force." The council members sat in stunned silence. High Counselor, an ancient being with silver skin and 6 arms, rose slowly from her seat. She had led the council for 2 centuries. She had never faced anything like this. "Ambassador," she said carefully, "surely we can discuss this. The Galactic Accords prohibit." "The Accords are words on paper," interrupted. "Words do not stop warships. Words do not protect planets. You have grown soft, Counselor. Your peacekeepers have not fired a weapon in 300 years. Your soldiers train for parades, not battles." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You have nothing that can stop us." Looked around the chamber desperately. Was right, and everyone knew it. The council had peacekeepers, yes. They had ships designed for escort duty and ceremonial functions. They had officers who had never heard a shot fired in anger. They had absolutely no way to fight a real war. "Perhaps," said a quiet voice from the observers' gallery, "we can help." Every head in the chamber turned. The observers' gallery was reserved for species that had not yet earned full council membership. There were only 3 delegations seated there, and 2 of them looked just as surprised as everyone else. The third delegation consisted of a single woman. Her name was. She was the sole representative of a species called humanity, from a small blue planet on the edge of explored space. The Council had granted humans observer status only 50 years ago, mostly as a courtesy. They were considered primitive, violent, and entirely unremarkable. Their technology was centuries behind. Their ships were slow and crude. Most council members forgot they existed. She was small by any standard, with black hair and calm dark eyes. She wore a simple uniform without decoration. She looked like nothing special. "Earth offers its assistance," she said. "We have soldiers if you want them." Laughed. The sound was harsh and ugly. "Soldiers, your species still kills each other over patches of dirt on your home world. Your entire military could not crew a single destroyer." "Perhaps," agreed, her voice remained calm, "but our soldiers know how to fight, do yours?" The chamber fell silent again. It was a fair question. They had numbers and technology, but they had not fought a real war in centuries either. Their military existed to intimidate, not to battle. High Counselor studied the human woman. There was something in her eyes, something old and hard and patient. It reminded of predators she had seen in museums, creatures from ancient times when species still hunted each other. "What exactly are you offering?" asked. "Soldiers," repeated. "Trained warriors. Humans who have dedicated their lives to the art of combat. We call them our military forces, but I believe the translation your computers will use is elite forces. Send them where you need them. Let them prove their worth." Waved a dismissive hand. "This is a waste of time. Humans are weak, fragile. They break easily and heal slowly. They cannot even breathe underwater or survive in vacuum. What possible threat could they pose to warriors?" Smiled. It was a small smile, thin and knowing, and somehow it made several council members uncomfortable. "You measure strength by scales and claws," she said. "By armor and venom and size. But there are other kinds of strength, ambassador, kinds that your species has never needed to develop, kinds that humans have been perfecting since before your ancestors crawled out of the ocean. She paused, letting the words settle. We come from a death world, she continued. Our planet is covered in predators that want to eat us, plants that want to poison us, and weather that wants to kill us. We have survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that would have ended any other species. We have been at war with our own world and with each other for our entire existence. Looked directly at, her eyes were steady and unafraid. Every human alive, she said softly, is the child of survivors. Every soldier we send you carries 10,000 years of warfare in their blood. We did not evolve to be peaceful. We evolved to endure, to adapt, to win. The chamber was completely silent now, even had stopped smiling. High Counselor made her decision. They had no other options. They would attack in 60 cycles, and the Council had nothing to stop them. If these humans wanted to throw themselves into the fire, let them. Very well, she declared. We accept Earth's offer. Send us your elite forces, ambassador. We shall evaluate their capabilities. Bowed slightly. I will contact my government immediately. Expect our first soldiers within 10 cycles. As she turned to leave, called after her. How many soldiers will you send, human? 1 million? 10 million? It will not matter, we have billions. Paused at the door, she looked back over her shoulder. We will start with 200, she said. Stared at her, then he laughed again, harder than before. 200 against the Empire. 200 is a good start, replied. After all, we do not want to be wasteful. She walked out of the chamber without looking back. High Counselor watched her go with a strange feeling in her chest. It took her a moment to identify it. Hope. For the first time since they had arrived, she felt something like hope. She had no idea what was coming. Galactic Station 12 was a fortress. It hung in orbit above the planet, a massive structure of metal and glass that housed 50,000 soldiers from a dozen different species. Commander stood at the main docking bay, watching the human transport ship approach. Was a species known for their size and strength. He stood 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. His ancestors had been warriors once, thousands of years ago, before civilization made such things unnecessary. Now he commanded the largest peacekeeping force in the sector. He had never seen real combat. None of his soldiers had. They trained, yes. They practiced formations and learned to use their weapons, but they had never faced an enemy who truly wanted to kill them. They were coming to change that. The human ship docked with a soft clang. It was small and ugly, covered in burn marks and patches. It looked like it had been built by children from spare parts. Shook his head in disappointment. The airlock opened, and the humans walked out. They were small, so terribly small. The tallest among them barely reached his chest. They had no natural armor, no claws, no obvious weapons built into their bodies. They looked soft and fragile, like creatures that should be protected from harsh weather, not sent into war. There were exactly 200 of them. A human male stepped forward and raised his hand to his forehead in a strange gesture. His name was, and he held the rank of sergeant. He was compact and muscular, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to look through things rather than at them. Sergeant reporting, he said. 3rd Infantry Division, Earth Defense Forces. We are ready for assignment. Looked down at him. 200 soldiers. This is what Earth sends against the Empire. This is the first group, replied calmly. More will follow, but 200 is enough to start. Start what? Dying, made a sound that might have been a laugh. They have 8 million troops. They have warships that can burn planets. They have warriors bred for battle, with scales that can stop bullets and claws that can tear metal. I have heard about them, said. They sound interesting. Stared at the small human. There was no fear in his eyes, no worry. He spoke about facing millions of enemies the way someone might speak about the weather. Are all humans insane? Asked. Smiled slightly. Some of us more than others. He gestured to the soldiers behind him. These are my best people, is our medic. He can patch a wound while bullets are flying. Carries the heavy weapons, is our sniper. She once hit a target from 4 kilometers away in a sandstorm. Is young, but he is brave. And the others are just as good. Studied the humans had named. Was slender and calm, carrying a pack filled with medical supplies. Was the largest of the group, though still small by standards, with thick arms and a friendly face. Stood perfectly still, her eyes constantly moving, watching everything. Looked barely adult, but he carried his equipment without complaint. They all looked so ordinary, so breakable. We have a mission for you, said finally. He had received orders from the council. Send the humans somewhere, see what they can do. Outpost in the system. It has been under siege for 16 cycles. Resupply is impossible. The garrison is running out of food, water, and ammunition. How many defenders? Asked. 300, mostly some. They are brave, but they will not last much longer. Enemy numbers. Hesitated. Approximately 8,000 ground troops, plus air support and artillery. The humans exchanged glances, expected to see fear or at least concern. Instead, he saw something else, something that looked almost like eagerness. That is not very many, said. Blinked, not very many. You will be outnumbered 40-1. We have been outnumbered before, said simply. We will manage. When do we leave? The is ready now, replied, still confused by their reaction. But I must warn you, everyone expects that outpost to fall. The council has already written off the garrison. This is a suicide mission. Nodded slowly. We do not have that word. What word? Suicide mission. In our language, we just call it a mission. Turned to his soldiers. Load up. We move in 10 minutes. The humans began gathering their equipment. They moved with smooth efficiency, checking weapons, adjusting packs, helping each other with straps and buckles. They did not rush, but they did not waste time either. Watched them with growing confusion. These creatures should be terrified. They should be demanding more support, more soldiers, more time. Instead, they acted like they were preparing for a routine exercise. Passed by him carrying a long rifle case. She was small even by human standards, with sharp features and cold eyes. You think we will die, she said quietly. It was not a question. I think it is very likely, admitted. Looked up at him. For a moment something flickered in her eyes, something ancient and dangerous. Many have thought that before, she said. They were wrong. She walked toward the without looking back. Sergeant approached one last time. Thank you for the assignment, Commander. We will send word when the outpost is secure. When, repeated, you mean if. Shook his head. No, I mean when. He climbed into the other humans followed. The door closed and the ship lifted off, carrying 200 fragile creatures toward a battle they could not possibly win. Watched until the ship disappeared from view. They walk into death as if greeting an old friend, he murmured to his aide. I do not understand them. Perhaps they are simply foolish, the aide suggested. Perhaps, agreed. But deep in his chest, in a place he rarely acknowledged, he felt something stir. It was a feeling he had not experienced in many years. Curiosity. He wanted to see what these strange little creatures would do. Outpost was burning when the humans arrived. They came in fast and low, dodging enemy fire. Through the windows, Sergeant could see the battlefield below. The outpost was a collection of buildings surrounded by walls, all of it by explosions and weapons fire. Beyond the walls, forces surrounded the base on all sides. Thousands of enemy soldiers, dozens of vehicles, and constant artillery bombardment. The garrison had been fighting for 16 days. They were exhausted, wounded, and running out of everything. The touched down inside the walls and the humans poured out, moved immediately toward the command building, where an officer was waiting. Sergeant Earth Defense Forces announced, "We are here to help." The officer looked at him with tired eyes. His name was, and he had been awake for 3 days straight. 200 soldiers, he said flatly. They send us 200 soldiers. It will be enough, said. Show me the situation. Led him to a map table covered in markings. The outpost was surrounded. They had breached the outer walls in 3 places. The defenders were barely holding the inner perimeter. Food would run out in 2 days. Ammunition in 3. We cannot win, said. We can only delay. Studied the map carefully. You have been defending, he said. That is your mistake. What else can we do? They outnumber us greatly. We attack, pointed to the enemy positions. Here, here, and here, their command posts, their ammunition depots, their communication centers. We hit them hard and fast. We make them afraid. Stared at him. Attack, with 200 soldiers against 8,000. Against 8,000 who have never faced humans, replied. There is a difference, trust me. He did not wait for permission. He turned and began giving orders. Within an hour, the humans had spread throughout the outpost, taking positions, setting traps, and preparing for battle. They attacked at dawn. They came in waves, confident and aggressive. They had been winning for 16 days. They expected the final assault to be easy. They expected terrified defenders hiding behind walls, waiting to die. They did not expect. She had climbed to the top of a ruined tower before sunrise. She lay perfectly still, her rifle aimed at the enemy lines. When the first wave of charge toward the walls, she began firing. The first shot killed an officer. The second killed another. The third, fourth, and fifth followed so quickly that the enemy did not understand what was happening. Soldiers fell without warning, without sound. They never saw the shooter. They never heard the bullet. By the time they reached the walls, they had lost 30 officers. Their charge became confused, disorganized. Orders were not given. Units did not know where to go. And then opened fire. He stood on top of the main wall, holding a rotary cannon that was designed to be mounted on vehicles. It weighed 100 kilograms. He carried it in his hands. The weapon roared like thunder and fell by the dozen. The first assault broke apart. The enemy retreated, confused and frightened. They had never experienced anything like this. In the medical bay, worked without stopping. Wounded soldiers from the garrison were brought to him constantly, and he treated them with calm efficiency. He sewed wounds, removed bullets, and set broken bones. He worked through explosions and gunfire, never flinching, never complaining. A soldier watched him with amazement. You do not rest, she observed. Later, replied, not looking up from his work. There will be time for rest when everyone is safe. When did you last sleep? Thought about it, 4 days ago, maybe 5. They could not believe it. Her species required 12 hours of sleep every cycle. Going without sleep for even 1 day would leave them barely functional. This human had been awake for 4 days and was still operating with perfect precision. How is this possible? She asked. Smiled slightly. We are used to it. On our world we have a saying, sleep is for the peaceful. The battle continued for 6 days. They attacked again and again. Each time they were driven back. Each time they lost more soldiers than they gained ground. They tried night attacks, and his squad were waiting, their eyes adjusted to darkness, their weapons ready. They tried artillery bombardment, but had already anticipated this, moving troops to protected positions before each barrage. On the 4th day, shock troops breached the eastern wall. They were the enemy's best soldiers, large and powerful, with enhanced armor and weapons. They expected to slaughter the defenders. Instead, they found waiting for them. He carried only a combat knife. They hesitated, this small creature holding a simple blade standing before them without fear. It made no sense. Moved first. He was faster than they expected, much faster. He ducked under the first attack and drove his knife into the gap between armor plates. The fell, before the body hit the ground, was already moving to the next target. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, 7 shock troops lay dead, stood among them, breathing hard but unhurt. Officer had watched the entire thing. His hands were shaking. "What are you?" he whispered. Wiped his knife clean. "We are humans," he said simply. "This is what we do." On the 6th day, reinforcements finally arrived. A fleet of council ships broke through the blockade and landed troops at the outpost. By then, the siege was effectively over. They had started with 8,000 soldiers. They had lost more than half. Their officers were dead. Their morale was shattered. When the reinforcements arrived, they retreated in disorder. Outposts still stood. The council commander who led the relief force walked through the base in stunned silence. He counted the human soldiers who had survived. 189 out of 200. 11 dead. 11 humans against 8,000. "This is impossible," he said. Shrugged, "We did what was necessary." The commander looked at the bodies of enemy soldiers, the destroyed vehicles, the evidence of close combat throughout the base. He had seen battle reports before. He had never seen anything like this. "What are your elite forces like?" he asked suddenly. "If this is what regular soldiers can do, what are your special units capable of?" Did not answer immediately. He thought about the teams back home, the ones who trained in conditions that would kill normal soldiers, the ones who considered his infantry soft. "You do not want to know," he said finally. The commander believed him. News of outposts spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. At first, no one believed it. The numbers were impossible. 200 soldiers holding a position against 8,000. 11 casualties against more than 4,000. It had to be a mistake. It had to be propaganda. It had to be a lie. Then the videos emerged. Combat recorders had captured everything. Soldiers across the galaxy watched footage of Sergeant fighting shock troops with a knife. They saw carrying a vehicle-mounted weapon in his hands, firing it like a rifle. They saw eliminating officers from distances that should have been impossible. They saw, barely an adult, holding a breach alone for 3 hours. But the video that spread furthest showed something much simpler. It showed a human private named. During the siege, a section of wall had collapsed on a group of defenders. The rubble pinned them, crushing them slowly. Heavy equipment could not reach them in time. They were going to die. Had grabbed the largest beam and lifted. The beam weighed over 300 kilograms. Weighed 60. She should not have been able to move it. She should not have been able to hold it. Her muscles should have torn, her spine should have broken. She held it for 4 minutes. In the video, you could see her body shaking. You could see blood dripping from her nose and ears. You could hear her screaming, not in fear but in defiance. She refused to let go. She refused to let her allies die. When the last was pulled free, dropped the beam and collapsed. She was unconscious for 6 hours. When she woke up, she asked when she could return to duty. That video was viewed billions of times. The Galactic Science Academy demanded biological samples and data from the human soldiers. They wanted to understand what made these creatures so different, what gave them such impossible abilities. A research team led by a scientist named Toss spent months studying the results. When they published their findings, the galaxy changed forever. "Humans do not have the strongest muscles," the report stated. "They do not have the sharpest senses. They have no natural armor, no venom, no claws. By most measures, they are unremarkable. But they have evolved something far more significant. They have endurance." The report explained that humans came from a planet where they had hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could run for hours, for days if necessary. They could function without sleep for extended periods. They could ignore pain that would disable other species. And most importantly, they could push beyond their physical limits. Human muscles are capable of much greater force than they normally use, the report continued. Their brains place limits on this force to prevent injury, but in extreme situations, humans can override these limits. They can access strength they do not normally possess. This is what we observed in private. But the most disturbing section of the report dealt with human psychology. Human soldiers do not accept defeat, the researchers wrote. They do not process surrender as an option. When faced with impossible odds, they become more dangerous, not less. They will fight with broken bones, with severe blood loss, with injuries that should render them unconscious. This is not training, this is not enhancement, this is simply what they are. We have studied many warrior species in the galaxy's history. None of them match the combination of endurance, adaptability, and sheer refusal to die that humans display. They are not the strongest, they are not the fastest, but they may be the most dangerous. The report spread quickly through military circles. Within weeks, every major species had read it. The conclusions were frightening. Humans had evolved on a death world, a planet that tried to kill them constantly. They had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, and natural disasters. They had fought predators, weather, and each other for hundreds of thousands of years. Every human alive was the descendant of survivors. They carried that survival instinct in their blood. The Empire took notice. Emperor himself read the report in his throne room. He had been confident of victory. His forces outnumbered the councils by a factor of 10. His technology was superior. His soldiers were bred for war. But now he watched the videos from Outpost. He read the biological research. He looked at the casualty numbers. How many humans are there? He asked his advisors. On their homeworld, approximately 8 billion. 8 billion, and if even a fraction of them could fight like the soldiers at Outpost. How many soldiers could they send? If they mobilized fully, perhaps 100 million active soldiers, with reserves and support possibly twice that. Felt something he had not experienced in a very long time, doubt. His empire had mobilized 8 million troops. It had seemed like an unstoppable force. But if 100 human soldiers could hold an outpost against 400 times their number, what could 100 million do? Send a message to the Galactic Council, he ordered finally. Request a ceasefire. We wish to discuss terms. His advisors stared at him in shock. The Empire had never requested peace before. They had always been the ones to dictate terms. Your Majesty, one advisor said carefully, we still outnumber them. We could. Could what? Interrupted. Send more soldiers to die, waste more resources on a war we cannot win. He gestured at the screen, which still showed holding the beam above her allies. Look at them. They do not fight like other species. They fight like they have nothing to lose, like death is just another enemy to be defeated. He shook his head slowly. We evolved to be warriors, he said quietly. But we have been at peace for too long. We have forgotten what real war looks like. These humans, they have never forgotten. War is in their blood, it is in their bones, it is what they are. He looked at his advisors with old, tired eyes. We cannot defeat a species that refuses to be defeated. Send the message. Across the galaxy, other species were reaching similar conclusions. They had been feared for centuries. They had the largest military, the most advanced weapons, the most aggressive expansion. Everyone had assumed they would win. But they were requesting peace, because of 200 humans. The balance of power had shifted. A new force had entered the galaxy. Small, fragile, primitive humans, and somehow, impossibly, they had changed everything. In the halls of the Galactic Council, Ambassador received the news of the ceasefire request with a calm nod. Will we accept? Asked High Counselor. Not yet, replied. They have not suffered enough. They do not truly understand yet. Understand what? looked at the counselor with those ancient, patient eyes. "That we are not going to stop," she said. "Not until they withdraw completely. Not until they return every planet they have taken. Not until they understand that attacking our allies was a mistake they will never make again." Felt a chill run through her. "And if they refuse?" Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then we will teach them, the same way we taught ourselves across 10,000 years of war, lesson by lesson, body by body, until they learn." She turned and walked away, leaving the counselor alone with her thoughts. For the first time, wondered if inviting the humans had been wise. They were useful allies, yes. They had saved the council from disaster. But allies like these could easily become something else. Something much more frightening. The war lasted 3 more years. They had requested a ceasefire, but they were not ready to surrender completely. They still believed they could win. They still thought that humans were just one lucky exception, that the next battle would be different. They were wrong. Everywhere humans fought, they won. Not easily, not without cost, but they won. They won on frozen moons where the temperature dropped to 200 degrees below zero. They won in jungle planets where every plant was poison and every animal was a predator. They won in space, boarding enemy ships and fighting hand to hand in the corridors. They learned new words, words like ambush and guerrilla warfare and psychological operations. They learned what it meant to fight an enemy who never stopped, who never rested, who treated every battle as personal. More human soldiers arrived every month. Thousands became tens of thousands. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. And with each new group came new surprises. They met human engineers who could build fortifications from nothing in hours. They met human medics who kept soldiers alive through injuries that should have been fatal. They met human pilots who flew their damaged ships directly into enemy formations rather than retreat. And finally, they met the special forces. It happened on Prime, the capital world of the Empire. Security was considered perfect. The palace was guarded by 50,000 elite troops. The Emperor was protected by the best soldiers in the Empire. None of it mattered. A team of 12 humans infiltrated the planet. Their leader was a woman named. She could hold her breath for 9 minutes and swim through water cold enough to kill most species in seconds. Her second in command was a man who had once walked 40 kilometers on a broken leg to complete a mission. The rest of the team included, who spoke every language in the sector and could disappear into any crowd. They bypassed every security system. They avoided every patrol. They moved through the capital city like ghosts, invisible and silent. When they reached the palace, they did not try to break in through the gates. They went through the water treatment system, swam through underground pipes for 2 kilometers, in complete darkness, in freezing water. The others followed. They emerged inside the palace without a single alarm being triggered. They did not kill the Emperor. That was not their mission. Instead, they walked into his bedroom while he slept, placed a human flag on his pillow, and left. When Emperor woke up and found it, he understood immediately. If they could reach his bedroom, they could reach anything. His life was in their hands, and they had chosen to spare it. He surrendered the next day. The war was over. The final peace summit was held at the Galactic Council chamber. Representatives from every species watched as the Empire signed the surrender documents. They returned all conquered territories. They disbanded most of their military. They paid reparations that would take centuries to complete. After the ceremony, High Counselor approached General. He was not sergeant anymore. 3 years of war had earned him promotion after promotion, but he looked the same as the day he had arrived at Galactic Station 12. Small, unassuming, ordinary. "We asked for your elite forces," said carefully. "Your finest warriors, your exceptional soldiers." "You received them," replied. "But we have studied your military structure now. The soldiers you sent us at first, they were not special forces. They were not elite units. They were regular infantry, basic soldiers. Nodded. We called them elite forces because we did not know what else to call them, continued. But now I understand. To you they were just soldiers, normal soldiers, average soldiers. That is correct. Leaned closer, her voice dropped to a whisper. Then what are your actual elite forces like? The ones like End? Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the special operations teams, the soldiers who trained in conditions that would be classified as torture by galactic standards, the warriors who could survive for weeks with no food, no water, no shelter, the ones who made infantry like himself look soft. Counselor, he said finally, I pray you never need to find out. Looked at the small human standing before her. She had studied his species for 3 years now. She had watched their soldiers fight and die and win impossible victories. She had read the research about their biology, their psychology, their history. And for the first time in her long life, she felt something she had never experienced in the presence of a younger species. Fear. Not fear of what they might do, fear of what they could do if they ever chose to. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Military academies across all species began studying human warfare. They analyzed tactics and strategies that had been forgotten for thousands of years. They watched recordings of human battles and tried to understand how such small, fragile creatures could accomplish such things. Some species sent observers to Earth. They wanted to see the world that had produced these soldiers. What they found confused them even more. They watched human children play games that simulated combat, hunting each other through fields and forests for fun. They watched human athletes push their bodies beyond breaking points, risking permanent injury for entertainment. They watched ordinary humans run toward disasters instead of away, rushing to help strangers without hesitation. They watched humans fight each other constantly, arguing and competing and struggling, always pushing, always striving, never satisfied. And slowly, they began to understand. Humans had not been forged by peace. They had been forged by a death world. Every generation had faced extinction. Every century had brought new challenges. Every human alive carried the weight of survivors who had refused to die, refused to surrender, refused to give up. The galaxy had spent 12,000 years evolving beyond violence. They had achieved peace through diplomacy, through trade, through mutual benefit. They had forgotten what war truly meant. Humanity had spent those same 12,000 years perfecting violence. They had never forgotten. They could not forget. It was written in their genes, their history, their very souls. Now they were part of the galactic community, allies, protectors, the soldiers who would stand between civilization and chaos. But every species who looked at them remembered what they had seen. Every leader who shook hands with human ambassadors thought about what those hands could do. Every civilization that called humanity friend knew that friendship could change. High Counselor gave a speech at the anniversary of the war's end. She welcomed humanity formally into the galactic family. She praised their bravery, their sacrifice, their dedication. But later, in private, she spoke to her closest advisors. We must never forget what they are, she said quietly. We must never give them reason to turn against us, because if we do, nothing in this galaxy will save us. The advisors nodded. They understood. Far away, on a small blue planet at the edge of explored space, humans went about their daily lives. They worked and played and loved and fought, just as they always had. They did not consider themselves special. They did not think of themselves as warriors or monsters or saviors. They were just people, doing what people had always done. Surviving, whatever it took, whatever the cost. The galaxy had trembled at their recruits, at their basic soldiers, at their ordinary infantry. They never asked what would happen if humanity ever truly went to war, if they ever stopped holding back, if they ever fought with everything they had. No one wanted to know the answer. And the humans, for their part, were perfectly happy to keep that secret. For now,